Hi everyone, thank you once again for joining us for the conversation. I hope you guys have got your food ready for all of us, especially the Singaporeans, right? Today we want to talk about food waste, the implication and the situation of it right now globally. So I'll hand over to Monica, who is the Sustainability and Partnership Lead from DBS Foundation and moderating the panel today. Over to you, Monica.
Thank you, Zamin, and thank you everyone who's joined us today for this conversation on consuming with purpose and moving towards zero food waste. And I do hope everyone has their lunch, but I am actually going to start on a little bit of a grim note while you're enjoying your lunches. According to the United Nations, they estimate that 1 in 9 people in the world actually do not have access to sufficient food to lead a healthy life. More people are reported to die from hunger every day than AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis combined. At the same time, over 1/3 of food that's actually produced in the world is lost or wasted somewhere along the supply chain. Food wastage is not just morally irresponsible, but actually causes huge economic losses as well as severe damage to the world and environment around us. And it's not just a global issue. It's one that is very pertinent to us. Over half of the food waste that happens globally happens in Asia. So home for many of us in Singapore, food waste is 10% of the total waste generated here in Singapore and has increased over 20% in the last decade. The NEA reported that in 2019 in Singapore, we generated more than 700,000 tons of food waste. And that's actually equal to each of us every day wasting more than 2 bowls of rice. So that's a lot of food waste, even just in Singapore. Clearly, this is an issue that is not one that will be solved by one person or one organization. It really requires various stakeholders to come together, businesses, consumers, government. And at DBS, being a purpose-driven bank, we have been focused on trying to reduce or trying to create awareness on reducing food waste in many different ways because it aligns with our broader sustainability agenda as a bank. And through the DBS Foundation, we have actually supported many social enterprises that in their own ways across Asia are actually trying to solve this issue of food waste. And it gives me great pleasure today to be here in a discussion with 3 social entrepreneurs from across Asia who are actually trying to address this issue in very different ways. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Nathaniel from Ento Industries in Singapore. Hi, Nathaniel. Terence from Green Price in Hong Kong. Hi, Terence. And finally, last but not least, Yude from Chaichong Agriculture in Taiwan. So thank you very much for joining us. And I'm actually not going to say any more. I would actually just like to jump right in and ask each one of you to really tell us how each of your businesses and social enterprises is working towards the issue of food waste and what you actually do. So maybe let me start with you, Nathaniel. Would you like to kick off?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. It's very good to be here. Thank you, Monica, DBS, and Race for actually giving me this chance to speak at this panel. My name is Nathaniel, and I've actually been working with food waste for over more than half a decade now. So what I actually do with food manufacturers is to recover the value from their waste so that they can actually get the most out of it and also end up wasting less. It was actually there that I saw the huge amount of waste that was being produced every day. And it was actually also there that I decided to find a solution that could be applied to many different streams of waste. This actually led to Ento Industries. So in 2020, earlier this year, I founded Ento Industries So what we are is that we are a company that uses both nature and technology to manage and upcycle large amounts of food waste. So how do we do this? Behind our company, we actually have millions of tiny employees, believe it or not, working day and night to upcycle this food waste. So these guys are actually insects called black soldier flies that have the ability to consume huge amounts of waste daily. So through the use of technology, we're actually able to regulate the way that they eat and grow so that they can finish out all that food waste. And then this process transforms that food waste into a really nutritious feed for all sorts of farm animals. So in this sense, what we do is we are able to take all these wasted food and instead of throwing them away, we turn them into materials to help produce more food. What we are is we are neither a waste management company. We're not a food feed producer. We are not a farm. Who we are is we see ourselves as a disruptive social enterprise that promotes sustainable production and that is capable of acting as a bridge between food producers and farms. Thank you, Monica.
Thanks, Nathaniel, for that introduction. Can we hear from you now, Terence, a little bit about what your business does and how it addresses food waste?
Yeah, sure. I'm Terence from Hong Kong, and I'm very glad to have this chance to share our concept to around Asia through this opportunity. We are a social enterprise that sells items which is near or past the best before date. And in Hong Kong, a bit different than other parts of Asia, we are allowed to sell items which is past the best before dates because we are following the British kind of food labeling systems. And the best before date is just an indication of the optimum quality of the products. And after that date is still safe for consumptions, but then it's not in 100% quality, but then it's still very fine and tasty. So that we try to connect with different suppliers around Hong Kong. And now we are expanding some of our sourcing team in Singapore and to source items and resell them in our physical stores. And currently we have 5 physical stores in Hong Kong, and we'd like to provide a very decent experience to our customers to save food, as well as to try out new products through our chain stores. Yeah, thank you, Monica.
Thank you for that. And last but not least, Yuda, would you like to tell us a little bit about Chai Chong Agriculture and what you do in addressing the food waste issue?
Thank you, Monica. Hello, everyone. My name is Yu De, and I'm the founder and CEO of Chai Chong Agriculture. This is a B2B platform helping restaurants, a consumer, to purchase ingredients from farmers. So the role is between the farm to table. We manage the supply chain, allowing the supply chain to become more efficient. And right now we are serving around 400 restaurants around Greater Taipei area, and we are expanding to the southern Taiwan. The way we help the supply chain to reduce food waste is through to reduce distance traveling from farm to table, as well as reducing the time in the storage. Another thing is that by shortening the distance, we are also contributing to cutting the carbon footprint. So there's a two-way we are helping the environment. And we try to build a business model that's considering environment as a part of the entire business. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Yuda. And absolutely, I think one of the things that often gets forgotten is that all the food that is wasted has actually taken a whole lot of resources, including water, and to actually produce it. So when we are wasting food, we're actually greatly impacting the environment in that way as well. Maybe I'll move on to a little bit more of and it really does in addressing the food waste issue. But I'm really interested in hearing more about what motivation really for each of you to get into this area, and what made you interested. I think a few of you are quite relatively
But after that, I realized, my contribution in the business area, has more to do with my experience and expertise. So I went on to study mission. I studied environmental science as well as economics. So I try to understand the environmental issues with the lens of economics. So there I studied climate change and how that impacts the entire global food systems. By looking into the entire, the dynamics from the data, you get to understand, the problem today with the food system is pretty complex, but it's not with the ability for us to produce enough food. It's actually our inability to control for the waste. And that kind of complex dynamics is very intriguing to me on how technology can drive for a better business model, better economics, and better people behavior around the space. So I'm starting to think about, how new business model where reducing food waste can be part of it, and it become a function of it, as well as how I really can, drive technology in different part of it in order to, change some of the dynamics throughout the value chain. So that's where I came from. Luckily, in the past 3 years, since the starting of the company, we have been reducing more than 250 tons of food, as well as we cut around 5,000 tons and kilometers of the carbon footprint. So we're proud to say that we have contributed a little bit to the society, but we want to make the impact even more sound. So really appreciate that opportunity for us to share our story here in the panel. I hope that you guys can share more idea with us to support for our impact.
Thank you, Yuda, and that's a fascinating personal story about how you made the transition and something that I think is very insightful for many of us listening today. Maybe let's hear from you, Nathaniel, your personal motivation and what got you interested in this area.
Thanks, Monica. Right. So, I was actually brought up in a very traditional Asian household. Where food wastage is actually a no-no. They had superstitions. We had superstitions where the amount of food that you have left on your plate, the grains of rice that you have left on your plate would then, translate into the pimples that you have on your face, those kind of things, right? So I was always actually very conscious of waste being a bad habit, but I never really actually played a very active role in saving food waste. So this was actually until only after I joined Tionglam to work with food waste, that I actually understood the magnitude of food waste that was actually being generated by the industry. Because on a daily basis, we would be collecting food waste from all these food manufacturers, and the amount that came in was an eye opener at the start for me. So this really started my journey on dealing with food waste. So being in that industry at that point in time really allowed me to interact with all these food producers and actually talk to them about their issues regarding waste, because we see how much waste was being produced and how much resources could be saved there. And what I really found out from all these SMEs, mostly SMEs, was that most of their capital, most of their funds were actually being directed to their main business, which was to produce food. And they had very little. They knew that there was a lot of food being wasted, but they didn't know what to do with it, and they didn't have the funds to go and deal with it. So this was actually my wake-up call to do something about the waste that I saw being discarded daily. So in supporting and in accepting Ento, we really are, what we really want to do is play a supporting role with these food manufacturers to be able to aid them in recovering their food waste and recovering the value from their food waste. So this was actually my story and how we actually started Ento.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think apart from the issue of food waste, I think it's just really fascinating to hear the story of a social entrepreneur, and I think how each of you have actually taken the step to making a difference and running a business at the same time, which is very much possible and which is really hopefully the future of all business, really. Over to you, Terence. Let's hear from you about your personal journey a little bit.
Yeah, sure. We have started Green Price, our social enterprise, like 4 years ago. And during that time, I was still a university student. And all of our co-founders, our team, are a bunch of business administration students. And we are fascinated by the idea that we can like adopt some business model in solving real social problems. That's why we have joined a different visit organized by societies to go to different parts of Hong Kong to look at like social issues that we can tackle in. By chance, we have visited a food rescuing restaurant. They will usually recycle all the caterings from hotels and support them back to the elderlies. And during that visit, we were told that Hong Kong each year wastes more than 1.5 billion of expired items, but then it's still editable. It's just after the best before date. And so we think that it is a very devastating problem in Hong Kong, and we love to investigate like methods in solving these issues. By chance, I visited during my exchange studies. I visited a supermarket in the European countries that advocates the same concept in selling best before date and short dated items. And I thought that there was no way that Asia cannot do the same thing. And that's why we tried to bring the concept back to Hong Kong and start to advocate the concept and change the concept of Hong Kong people to appreciate and to accept items which has passed the best before date. And then we joined a competition and successfully won the competition and granted some funding to start off our small enterprise. And we started by launching a pop-up store in weekend market and slowly launched stores in the mall and launched small in the ground floor of the street. And that's how we started our journey.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I am pretty sure that Green Price it's definitely the one and only one of its kind in Hong Kong, but I am pretty sure that you're one of the first across Asia as well to bring this concept. And as you describe it, it seems so intuitive, right? It seems like, why wouldn't we do this? You know, there's just a business idea just waiting there. And so really hats off to you and your friends for bringing that into Hong Kong and making a successful business out of it. And actually that leads me to my next question, and maybe I will start with you, Terence. And I guess something that I'd like you all to share is really, what are some of the big challenges that you faced along the way? I mean, as I said, listening to you, it seemed like a very obvious business idea, but clearly the fact that it hadn't been done before means that there were challenges along the way to making it happen. So tell us a little bit about what challenges have you faced in your journey, and also just a bit more broadly about challenges for, I guess, scaling up some of the ideas or some of the businesses that each of you operate.
It sounds very straightforward in selling the short dated items, but then indeed it's very difficult to start off. Because both suppliers and consumer in Hong Kong did not have the concept of reselling those items before, and they thought us are very crazy before. And we knocked the door of hundreds of suppliers before our launch of the pop-up store. They didn't give us even a reply, and but then we are still very lucky that one of our professors introduced his friends to us, and to supply us the first batch of items to test out the market. So that it's really difficult to reach out suppliers at the very beginning stage. And then after we successfully sold the first batch of items, some media interviews came to us, and with the interviews, like newspaper, we can a bit more easily to reach different suppliers. But then we face another challenge, which is in the operation landscape. Because we are only selling items which is near the best before date, and that's why our product portfolio will be foreverly changing, and our administration cost is much higher than usual supermarkets. And that's why we try different methods to tackle this issue. For example, like creating our own systems to calculate the price and quantity by correlating it with our previous product portfolios. We also adopt some digital price tag that could change from time to time. The price can be changed, the product information can be changed, so that we can like adopt to different product portfolio very efficiently. And at the very end, which is in the customer perspective, it's really hard for them to accept the concept as well. That's why in our stores, we usually provide trials for them to taste out the items to prove that items which has passed the best before date is still very tasty and editable to them. And we spend a huge effort in training our staff to to promote the products which can hardly be sold in original channel. So it is really difficult in different parts of the supply chain to promote the concept. But then we thought that we would try our best in doing that, and it would have a great harvest if we can successfully implement the plan.
Thank you for sharing that. Yuda, your thoughts on the same question, some of the challenges you've faced along the way?
Oh yeah, sure. In the past 3 years, it's a startup scaling very fast. But our major challenge actually lies with the intersection between the very traditional industry of the agricultural supply chain as well as the technology. So you can think of that, a group of technologists building, beautiful software. They also need to understand the every piece, every detail of the traditional industry. So some of them need to wake up at midnight, understand how the food supply chain looks like and how that works. Also, the traditional way of managing the supply chain need to adopt the technology we built for it quickly. So that will create a lot of the challenge for us. For example, first, all the software engineer need to go onto the supply chain, the farm, to understand all the users when we build the software for them. Also, it's made us very difficult to hire, the top software engineers just by, calling this is a beautiful, beautiful product. We also need to, call for their purpose, their the drive internally, in order to make sure that this is not just building a beautiful software, but also they need to understand the very traditional piece of the industry as a whole. So we're kind of starting two companies at once. One is scaling in the traditional sector, another one is building our software products together. That's kind of the major challenges we're facing, not just in the past 3 years, but also right now. But I think for now, we gradually understand how to become a hybrid model of how the team can operate. We get to understand that although we are not a global company, we're a global time zone company. So we get to use how to we get all the members to understand how they communicate with each other across different time zones and different functions. Yeah, but it's pretty difficult to, you know, start something pretty new in a very old space.
Thank you. That's fascinating, and yeah, very insightful. And I do think you're trying to do two different things, because you're really operating in a very traditional environment, but trying to bring something, you know, high tech environment for impact. Nathaniel, let's hear from you about some of the challenges you faced as you set up Ento.
Right. So I guess for me, my life up till now has been working with machinery and computers, things that are actually very predictable and can act on command. So I think, when we work end-to-end with the insects and all that, I think one of the things that we sometimes forget is that these guys are living things. They're not actually robots. You can't type in a command and then they'll follow it to the T, right? So it's kind of like a partnership between us and these guys, where we are really learning new things every day about their biologies and their behaviors. They are tiny humans. They have preferences with the kind of foods that they want to eat. So you got to keep them happy and healthy, and then they'll do the work. So I think one of the biggest challenges that I faced, a very eye-opening one, would be that we can't ever be too complacent about working with living things, with these animals, right? So we have to constantly change the way that we think, the way that we feed these guys, and the amount of data that we collect to move forward with this project. It's a very eye-opening experience, and I think there's a lot more that we have yet to learn and discover about these guys. So yeah, it's difficult, it's challenging, but it's very rewarding.
Great, and I guess again, the same thing about just trying to do something quite transformational when it comes to closing that loop on food waste. But at the end of the day, I guess the realization that you're working with these insects and they're living things, which just, I think also something, that was said earlier about, being, I guess each of you are very, very well qualified and skilled in each of and have the background to be doing what you're doing. But I think a very important ingredient in particularly in a social entrepreneur, I think, is that sense of purpose. And I think each of you and like was mentioned previously, even the people that you work with or that you hire, it's really important that they're skilled, but at the end of the day, it's really important that they understand the broader purpose or the bigger purpose in what you're trying to do. And I think, in the environment that we all find ourselves in this year, it's something that to me is important, not just for social entrepreneurs like yourself, but actually for every business. I think every single business is going to be looked at through the lens of, do you have a higher purpose, or are you just in it for the bottom line? So it's that whole concept of a dual bottom line, which I think is certainly something that the DBS Foundation has been actively championing for over the last 5 or 6 years. Okay, so I guess to my next question, could each of you share a little bit about what are some of the trends that you see? And again, I mentioned about the unique year that or your unique situation that the world is in. In that context, and even just more broadly with the experience that each of you have in your respective areas, what are some of the trends that you see around you that you think are going to be important to address, or that are going to really impact this broader issue of food waste globally, as well as in the parts of the world that you operate in? So maybe let me start with you, though.
Okay. Yeah. I'm pretty much a optimist for in the space. So in general, I believe the trend of reducing the food waste will become pretty much in line with what we all are trying to do. but I give you some reason. The first one is, the world is getting richer. People are getting richer, so the demand. Another thing is that the production of the food, the ability to produce more, will not increase at the speed as we saw in the past few decades. So you can see the demand is increasing, the supply become more steady, which means the gap between supply and demand is putting a lot of pressure in the supply chain and in the business model. And how we are going to close the gap, it's definitely with the efficiency of the supply chain. And how do we drive efficiency is with technology. So I will say that, we all sit here, we are trying to bring a lot of brain power to apply a lot of technology that is going to become more prominent in solving the significant problem. So I believe, in overall, the food waste issue will become less significant, but it still press huge pressure in our global food system. That's where we should call of us action into it. That's a trend I'm seeing.
Thank you, and it's good to hear an optimistic view, because clearly, when we look at some of the statistics, they're quite depressing. But I think it speaks well of some of the work that has already started happening, some of the work that social entrepreneurs like yourselves, some of the work that some corporates, like some of the work that we've been trying to do, I guess, as DBS, in trying to raise awareness of the issue. I think hopefully all of that really does drive more awareness, more consciousness, brings on board more people trying to address the issue. And as you very rightly said, the role of technology can play a huge role as well. So thank you for that optimistic view. Nathaniel, over to you. What do you think? Next 3 to 5 years?
I totally agree with Yuta about what he said about the demand growing, but the supply being very stagnant. I think the thing is that the population size is growing, and there is going to be an increase in the demand for food. And with the increase in that will lead to the increase in food production. And then, because of that, more food will be wasted unless something is done about the issue. Because a lot of the food, from my experience, a lot of the food a lot of the food waste that comes out of production houses are actually those things that we term inevitable waste. So they're actually byproducts that will still be produced alongside these food products. So one trend that I really see happening is that the younger generation does see the impact of waste on the environment, and people are starting to become more mindful about what they're eating, their consumption habits, and their purchasing habits. So more are actually stepping up stepping up efforts to curb this wastage and conserve resources. But I think fundamentally, before anything of this any of these things happen, there has to be a mindset change with regards to how we view waste. Waste is not waste unless it's something, unless we view it as such. Because waste to us is a resource that has not been tapped into yet, and I feel that real change can only come from changing this mindset to understand that these kind of waste can be used, can be repurposed to save the kind of resources that we will require in the future.
Thank you for that. And Terence, your thoughts?
Yeah, I very much agree with Yuta on the demand and supply side, and it's very apparently that food is not enough for everyone in the world to consume. But then, like, to my observation, some parts of the world is always having more than enough abundant kind of food to consume, and it is sometimes because that of the consumption behavior in some parts of the world. For example, like in Hong Kong or in mainland China, like purchase or order excess food sometimes like demonstrate wealth in previous generations. But then I can see that there is a trend that the society is now changing to a more and positive kind of sustainable living mindset. And I can observe that like more and more people in the Greater China area is embracing the concept of purchase what they really need, and to appreciate the concept of recycling. For example, in China recently, they have launched a campaign that targets some live streaming extreme eaters. They try to like encourage corporates to restaurants, especially, to offer less portion of food. Like the government is doing something to tackle that. Different businesses is also coming up with plans. Like grocery stores is like having a corner right now to offer consumer to fill up the appropriate amount of groceries that they want, so they can determine the amount they can really consume in a time frame. And in Hong Kong, like we are also trying to advocate the concept of like recycle items and to let the customers to help save the food that will originally be dumped to landfills. That's why I can see that the value chain and the mindset of customers is really changing in the past few years, and I hope that it will still be developed in the next 3 to 5 years. Thank you.
Thanks, Terence. And I think you know, both you and Nathaniel touched upon this this issue of changing mindsets, and I really think we talk about this huge global issue, but at the end of the day, it really comes down to each and every one of us changing our mindset. So whether it's understanding what waste actually is, or empowering ourselves to make a small difference in our day-to-day lives to reduce waste, I think that's really what it boils down to. And you know, just as a sort of just an interesting nugget, you know, when at DBS, when we kind of set up this internal zero food waste task force earlier this year, and actually the objective that we defined for ourselves, as we said, towards zero food waste, was, this is how we defined it. We actually said changing mindsets and behaviors. So it starts with changing the mindsets and hopefully translating some of those into behaviors. And some of the examples you gave there, Terence, are not very, very big things. You know, if you have excess food, redistribute it, you know, order a little bit less than you need to, you know, don't think that having excess food is a sign of, you know, hospitality or whatever. It's those little things which can truly make a difference. So thank you all for sharing your thoughts on that. I guess I'll ask one more question, and then we do have quite a few questions in the Q&A chat here as well. But I did want to ask a question about technology in particular, because I think it came up during our discussion. And you know, again, I think we do talk quite a lot about this whole notion of technology for good, right? How can technology be harnessed to truly make a difference to some of the most pressing social environmental issues of our time? And I thought maybe I'll start with you, Yuda, because I think your business really focuses on using that technology, and as you pointed out, really in a very, very traditional area as well. But could you talk a little bit more about the role that you think technology can play in solving some of the big issues in the world today?
That's a very, very difficult question. I'm trying to answer from my best. So if I look into technology, so I think there are two areas in general that technology can play a role in cutting the food waste. The first one is for some behaviors, for some industries that exist already. There are some certain way that have been operating for quite some time. Technology will change the economics inside it. Okay. So what does that mean? That change the cost structure. For example, in the past, from farm to table, what happened within the supply chain? A farmer will call someone and write the order using line to take a picture and send that to some wholesaler. Wholesaler do the same with their middlemen. Middlemen do the same to some distributor or retailers. And retailers, in some traditional market, they buy using cash or etc. So you can see that the entire supply chain is pretty manual. Okay, but with technology, what has changed? That changed the way data flow across the chain. So a lot of manual effort got removed from the supply chain, as well as a lot of accuracy problem reduced from the supply chain. So let's move into the second area that I think technology can contribute to solving the problem is that it actually creating new capabilities for the sector. The first one is, let's take data for example. Data actually create two kinds of capability. First one is standardization. The second one is prediction. So when you have data that's giving you the ability of standardization, you can start to understand, which step of the supply chain is less efficient, which one is more efficient. How do you change the business model? How do you change the supply chain? How do you change the SOP, standard processes? So that gives you the ability to improve the efficiency, and efficiency reduce waste. The second one is prediction, predictability. The data will give you, some idea about the future, and that means you can do better demand planning, which means you do better supply chain planning, and you do better supply planning. So you don't produce that much and use a lot of buzzword like cold chain, building up gargantuan refrige, freezer, a lot of trucks just to put those food on hold until someone purchased it. It gives you better predictability to match the entire chain. So that's where I see technology play both roles. One is changing the current cost structure and making more efficient. Second one is giving the sector new capabilities. That's the two major roles I see technology play in cutting food waste.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Any thoughts from Terence, Nathaniel, either of you around just technology in general?
Yeah, I do agree that data is very important to us. Like in the previous years, it is not even possible to think that items in maybe like us supermarkets can foreverly change because like the administration cost is too huge to adopt this kind of concept. But then with the help of data right now, we can streamline some of the operation. For example, like our price and quantity is predicted with the previous data that we have through a machine learning algorithm. And so that I think it do help quite a lot in this era to for us to create and adopt concepts that is not even possible in previous years. And apart from this, I think that technology nowadays is more easily to be adopted than as before, because now some of the services is provided through cloud-based, and we do not need to have the whole team in information system to work on a single project, and we can simply collaborate with other technology firms. For example, in the POS, a point of sale system that we are having, we simply subscribe to the services provided by companies in other countries. And it is more easy for us to adopt new technologies and to try out new things to simplify our supply chain model and let it to become more efficient.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm conscious of time, so I do want to kind of pick up some of the questions that have come up in the chat and try and get some answers. So maybe I'll just maybe Nathaniel, do you want to share some thoughts on that? And for the others, please do jump in afterwards if you have thoughts as well.
Yeah, so I think first of all, I would like to say that, corporates such as, DBS has done a fantastic job with the foundation, going out of its way to help social enterprises, gain traction in a very competitive business scape. But I know that this is something that is not achievable for many of them. I think the main issue here would be for corporates to first speak up, because corporates don't actually talk about sustainability because there's a stigma that it actually affects their immediate bottom line. So nobody really wants to talk about it. There's no one person in there who wants to voice out and say that, hey, you need to spend this money because you know what, you look at the future. Because the present the immediate effect is that we would have to spend an additional amount of money in order to be sustainable in this way. So that's one thing that they have to do, and I think corporates have to recognize that people like us, social enterprises like us, we simply play a supporting role in sustainability, and we'll only be able to really achieve real change with the help of industry, consumer, and policymakers. Everybody has to play their part. So we are like this tiny cog in the big value chain, where if you only see an impact if everyone moves along in the same direction. If everyone's moving in different directions, in the end, nothing's going to happen. We will have the same problem, coming on to us 10 years from now. I think an example of this would be corporates helping with, the segregation of food waste at the source of production. There is a lot of, for us, for Ento Industries, a lot of the food waste that we take in, a lot of it still has its plastics and other inorganics intact. So we deal with food waste, and in order to separate all these inorganics out from the organics, the things that we can deal with, it actually takes extra steps, and this really inhibits our ability to do more. It's much more cost effective to work with waste that has already been segregated, but for this to happen, it really requires involvement on the part of the producer, because it can be done very easily on their part, and producers will again have to change that mindset to think that this is going to cost me more money, but they would have to, I think, look more into the future to see that this would actually ultimately benefit the producer, because with all these unnecessary costs out of the picture, it actually allows us to give more back to them and to do more about these wastes.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I do agree. I mean, I think I said at the very start, I think the different stakeholders coming together is really what's going to move the needle. Yuda, did you want to say anything? Did you want to add on to that?
So, I look at the problem, the question probably answered in a very tiny piece of idea. The first one is probably you need to hire very like-minded talents who really share the same value. So, we all care a lot of, social issues. Food waste probably just one, and other things. So, in our team, we not just care about the environment, we also care about many other social issues. We give them social movement leave, so they can leave for like protesting something that they care about the most. So you started to call all this kind of value in the talents they want to work with you, to share their passion about the society and the social issue you care about too. So that kind of the step number one, you want to build your corporate onto some purpose. That's probably just like my very simple idea for contributing to some social issue.
It's a simple idea, but it's a great idea. I mean, it really, I think, is going to be a lot of what even the latest research is showing is that actually people are looking for businesses that do have purpose at the core. So it's really important that your business, and again, I think the reason that we have the three of you here today is actually to show that it does work. You can have a successful business and have a true purpose at the core of it as well. So you know, the whole notion of being a business for good is true, and it works. So thank you for that. We have a few questions here, so let me run through so we can cover at least 3 or 4 more before we run out of time. One of the questions here is, what are some of the key metrics you use to measure the social impact you have created in food waste management? So it's not addressed to anyone in particular. And so if any of you would like to take that, what kind of metrics do you use in your respective businesses to really track that impact?
Maybe I share just very quick. We have 2 metrics. One is the tons of food that's going to, you know, the tons of the food waste we reduce from the supply chain. So number one. The second one is the carbon footprint that's going to optimize for the route from farm to table. So we benchmark with our industry standard and, you know, how we improve from the base of ourselves. So there's 2 major metrics we set for ourselves.
Thank you.
Yeah, ours is quite similar. For us, we measure the amount of like short-dated food that we sell to our customers annually, because like every items that is sold through our stores will be originally to hiding. Apart from this, we also look into the best before date, the period that has passed the best before date of our food, so that we can be clear that like how many percentage of our items are actually very hard to deal with in the original channel, and we are serving in a greater purpose rather than like selling normal products that can be retailed in normal supermarkets. And we told our staff to only source products which has huge difficulties in distributing them in original channel, and we do not accept items which is in normal conditions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. There's another question here, which is a more general one. So maybe I'll pick this, and then there's a specific one for you, Terence, which I'll get to after that. But there's a general question about how do we move towards achieving zero waste management in the community? So I think this is more about what maybe we were speaking about previously, is how do we get people to adopt zero waste management? And are there any, I guess, quick thoughts that you have, maybe like one tip or one idea about how we could achieve that in a more widespread manner? Anyone? Nathaniel, do you wanna attempt answering?
Yeah, I think zero waste management is actually not that difficult to achieve. We have to think of it as we can't continue thinking of it as we are just one person. We can't affect any change that happens, because if you think about it, I was actually just talking to a friend the other day about this. There are 6 degrees of separation, right? So that means that for every person, as long as you reach out to 6 people and you're able to do something about it, eventually the entire world would change that kind of a mindset to achieve that zero waste management. So I think my advice would really to be in everything, in all your purchases, be conscious of what you're purchasing, of what you're buying, of whether you really need it or not. Be conscious of your actions there and the way that you consume. And then I think that would really go a long way, to helping organizations, to helping corporates, produce better, because responsible consumption does a lot to impact responsible production.
Absolutely, thank you. And actually, there's a question that's posted here, which it relates very much to what you just said, which says, as consumers, how can we start our eco-consciousness with refuse before we get to recycle to help become zero waste. For example, when there will be less demand, there will be less production of an item and automatically less waste to worry about. Example, plastic, styrofoam, etc. So I guess, I mean, it's not really a specific question, but I think it relates to what you're saying. We each of us need to start with refusing a little bit and not even need to reach the point of recycling. So thank you for that. There is a specific question for you, Terence, that I just wanted to call out as well. You mentioned conceptualizing a proprietary measurement algorithm. How do you ensure this is in line with international standards of zero waste computation? I think you're on mute, Terence. We can't hear you.
Sorry. You mean the algorithm that we adopt?
Yes, I think it refers to that. Yes.
Actually, it is an algorithm that like calculate that with the previous history that we have on our sales, that we can predict the price and quantity that our buyers can negotiate with our suppliers. So it's more like internal kind of technology that we use to simplify the process and provide the best price possible to our suppliers.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And maybe one last one, because we have spoken about mindsets a little bit. So there's a question here that says, mindset change is a key concern. How quickly do you think this will lead to significant impact? How long do you think it would take for us to get there? So thoughts from anyone. I guess it's a good wrap-up question to say, how long do you think it's going to take for us to really start moving the needle on food waste? Anyone?
Yeah,
Nathaniel, go for it. Yeah.
I think maybe the real question here is, how long would it take for that one individual person, to change, for you to change? Because it really, like what you mentioned earlier, Monica, each of us has to play our part. So I mean, apart from the educators and the policymakers that are able to drive this change, I think individually this really boils down to what you can do. If everyone does their part, and we would see this change come really quickly. But that we have to have that kind of a mentality that whatever I do matters. Whatever my purchase and the way that I deal with things, it all matters. And then we would be able to reach this kind of impact really quickly.
Thank you. I love that, and I think I think it's a great way to wrap up this conversation. Really, to say that at the end of the day, the change is going to happen as soon as each of us makes that change in our lives. So I think on that note, we'll probably close. We do have a few other questions, but I think we're running out of time, so we'll stop here. And I just want to say thank you to each one of you for the work that you do, the difference that you're trying to make at different points of the food value chain, in different parts of the world. We need more people like you. We need more businesses like you. And I'm really honored that we had this chance to talk about this very, very important issue, but that we had the three of you here to share not just what you're doing towards food waste, but also your own journeys as social entrepreneurs. So it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much. And with that, I'd like to end this panel discussion and hand it back to Zamin. Over to you, Zamin.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, the whole panel, for sharing your experience, your personal story with us. And I would like to echo again that it really starts with every one of us. And the very first step you can do today is to finish your lunch. Do not waste any bit of the food right now. And if you want to get in contact with any of our panelists or our moderator, their LinkedIn is being sent in the chat right now, so you can reach out to them there. And also, if you want, and you should, check out our festival website at www.festivalforgood.sg for more information. And also, maybe I will quote one of the panelists, responsible consumption will lead to responsible production. So join us for our next conversation happening on Sunday at 3 p.m. on sustainable consumption, making your dollar count for the impact. Thank you and have a great day ahead.